I want to thank Tony again. She has a very busy travel schedule, so I'm glad she could make it here and share that knowledge with all of you. It's now my pleasure to introduce you to one of my very favorite food and agriculture journalists, Tom Philpott from Mother Jones. He'll be moderating our next discussion on agriculture and entrepreneurship. So please join me in welcoming Tom, Riana Lynn from Journey Foods, Joi Chevalier from the Cook's Nook, and Sue Beckwith from the Texas Center for Local Food to the stage.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you to Food Tank and the sponsors for inviting us. I could not be more excited about this panel. And I think that we live in a time when you think about entrepreneurs and that kind of whole idea, it's really easy or even hard not to now think about Elon Musk, building a space rocket so we can escape climate change and move to Mars, or some Stanford grad, innovating an app that basically drains money from independent restaurants and screws workers at the same time, so we can order food and get it delivered in 5 minutes. But there are other visions of this concept that involve communities coming together in solidarity and solving actual problems and building economies, innovating to build economies that actually work for people in those communities. And I think that it's a lot more complex and difficult without having a social democracy. And we're here in a state where healthcare is not only not universal, but we're one of the few states that didn't expand Medicaid, and has tremendous hurdles to get health care if you're a low-income person. And of course, that puts the burden on small businesses. This is a country where your employer is supposed to provide your health care, and that just makes it much more difficult. Things like the low minimum wage, all these things make it very difficult to do a kind of just version of entrepreneurship in this country. But what we have here is some people trying to figure out a way to do it that isn't extractive, that doesn't screw workers, that includes farmers, that includes people who are disadvantaged, that recognizes the racial inequality that we have in this country and the income inequality, and tries to build models from the ground that address that. So with that, I'm just. These are some very inspiring people here, and I want to introduce them one by one. We've got Riana Lynn from Journey Foods here. Welcome to sort of semi-post-pandemic Austin. You've been here for a couple of years, and now we're finally seeing it lift. Who needs no introduction in this room? Joi Chevalier, who does lots and lots of amazing work. And finally, we've got Susan Beckwith with the Texas Center for Local Food, which is moving to build a sort of, to remember that one of the things that we have to do when we talk about local business is include farmers and figure out a way to bring farmers into the discussion. So, with that introduction, why don't we start with you, Sue, and sort of move this way. Take a few minutes to tell us what you're up to and sort of the challenges and opportunities you see out there right now.
Okay, thank you so much. It's really wonderful to be here with all of you. I was telling Joi that I haven't sat this close to someone I wasn't married to in 2 years. So it's a pleasure, honey. So I can't see you, so let me know. The Texas Center for Local Food provides education and technical assistance for farmers and ranchers across Texas to help make sure that they can have a viable business, a viable farm business. That, of course, means that people have to buy their food, right? And they have to be able to get it to the person that's buying it. Dr. Pierce Burnett talked about keeping it real. So I want to just give you just a little bit of reality about Texas. There's 30 million people here. We spend probably about $150 billion a year on food. And all of the organic and sustainable farmers in our state, there's probably fewer than 200. And if we're talking about black farmers and ranchers, there's probably a couple dozen who are selling human food to people. I mean, what do we think would happen after 4 years of theft, deprivation? I mean, calling it discrimination is doing it a favor. So the skills are gone, the tools are rusted, and a lot of the land is lost. So that's kind of where we are, and that's kind of what's real in Texas. The Rio Grande Valley, beautiful, grows most of the food that's grown in Texas, and is home to the most impoverished counties in our state and some of the most impoverished counties in the country. Is that okay with you? No. Black farmers and ranchers are losing heritage land in Central Texas every single day to predatory developers. Letters and phone calls every single day. Is that okay with any of us? So who's doing that? And who do we know who's doing that, and we can make them stop doing that? So that's really my introduction. I want to inspire you to work within your sphere of influence to center the farmer in the food you eat, in your business, in your school, in your philanthropy. What are you doing to support farmers and ranchers in Texas, in your region? Because whatever benefits the farmer is going to benefit you, is going to benefit all of us. So use your entrepreneurial spirit, use your creativity, and follow that farmer and follow that money and ask questions. Who's the farmer who benefits? Where are they? What is the benefit to them? And when are they going to benefit, right? And farm workers are farmers, by the way. So, thank you.
All right.
Okay, that was Sue. And she always speaks the truth. I am Joi Chevalier, and I own the Cook's Nook here in Austin. And I'm really fortunate. I was one of those who had the ability to leave a corporate role as a global strategist and say, what's missing in Austin, and where am I going to go next? What am I going to do? And what skills do I have, and where should that be? And there's this thing that we now call food and tech. And it was, how do we bring together the processes that we know how to do in technology, which is to get to market, create products, create sustainable businesses, and where should I take that and end up in culinary? And it's been an amazing ride here in Austin at the Cook's Nook. And then we'll talk about some more of that later. But then a couple years ago, while in a COVID fever, I, as a product person, decided that it was essential to figure out a new method to feed lots of people using what was happening in a broken supply chain and a broken labor market. And we came up with the idea that many of you know is now Keep Austin Together, or CFAN, which is the program that feeds about 12,000 across Travis County with prepared meals, nutritious prepared meals, and a distribution model that was unique and targeted, which had been my career at Dell, was to actually run all of targeting worldwide for them. And how do we reach those communities? And so that's what we created, and that's what I still do these days, along with trying to figure out how do we create just systems as part of the Austin-Travis County Food Policy Board. So yeah, that's a short story.
Wonderful.
Well, I'm Riana Lynn. I'm the founder of Journey Foods, and I'm just grateful to be here. That's my introduction. But no, Sue, Joy, Tom, Danny, Tony, I mean, what such great inspiration I can draw from and sort of push forward as I consider myself a technologist, a scientist turned technologist. I come from a family of farmers that migrated from Alabama up north to Chicagoland area in the 60s. And so, you know, it's interesting you said that. I received a call literally about 2 hours ago. Someone calling from my grandmother. We co-owned some land together to see if we wanted to sell some land in South Carolina. And they usually contact her, but I don't know how they got my number. And so what's so interesting is that But I sort of have this history of agriculture in my family and really started out in food, supporting local farmers in Chicago with a chain of juice bars, and then launched a food traceability company before working in more tech and venture capital. When I landed on really the goal around Journey Foods, and that is in the packaged food industry. At Journey Foods, we focus on the $3 trillion problem that's really accelerated every decade since the 1940s. When in the 1940s, we were sort of smallholder farmers, family sustenance. We were all pretty much farmers in our families, all of us here. And even if your family immigrated here, and today, 70% of our daily caloric intake is packaged processed foods. You could say, and I often say that packaged processed foods is probably the #1 cause for death worldwide. Chronic disease is really critically linked to the way we eat, and at Journey Foods we really focus on the what and how of the packaged foods that we are consuming every single day. And so our team is driving critical data services around sustainability and nutrition, and what's most important now is the supply chain and costs. Lots of companies are greenwashing and trying to bring better products to the market, but at the end of the day, if it's not affordable for their bottom line or for the consumers, we just can't get it done. And I continue to be grounded in these moments, and very grateful for Danny inviting me here so that I can leave a tech bubble and make sure that we're continually working and partnering to figure out how we can best address the most critical problems that we're facing through the food supply chain, especially in packaged foods. And additionally, at Journey Foods, last year we launched Journey Labs. We're working with 15 universities across the world and 6 HBCUs to make sure, especially that Black students are building the future of data in food. And HT student sourcing is a part of that. And yes, I want to continue the conversation around on data and tech, but I hope I can sort of lean on the shoulders of you all and make sure we continue to sort of focus on this change.
It's a great combination of people up here.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, one of the models that we sort of use in talking about food and tech is this notion that there's these market sets. And one is production, one is transformation, and then you have market and retail, right? That experience when it actually reaches people. And that sort of is kind of what sits here, when we talk about farms produce, what is the value, what's the dollar, how does it stay there? But one of the challenges that always happens in this transition is it's the transformers where the money goes. It is moved from the producer, and it sits in these other buckets. And part of, I think, what Sue and I often talk about is how do we turn that into a loop versus just going this way, if you think about it.
Yeah, and I think that it's a great way to transition into my question that I have for you all, because I think one of the real, I feel like you guys are really on the front lines of the big problems in the food system, and I've been on it. I've been a restaurant worker. I've been sort of a small-scale farmer trying to figure out how to make a living, and it seems like the big paradoxes here are kind of going back to my introduction about the inequality in this country, the legacy of racism that remains very much alive and vibrant today. Particularly, in farming, the history of African American farmers being just this sort of gaping example. That the challenge is figuring out a way to have a business that pays the farmer a fair price, and this is basically what I banged my head up, the wall that I banged my head up against for 10 years. The farm project that I did in North Carolina, getting the farmer a fair price, keeping the farm business sustainable, while creating a product that is accessible, that doesn't just feed an elite who can afford to pay it. And I'm wondering if y'all could just sort of wrestle with that question and think about how, what small businesses trying to do that, trying to operate in a just way in this sort of unjust society, what are some of the things that, I don't know if it's policies or consumer behavior or business practices, but how have you all wrestled with that?
Yeah, my head is stirring with. Go ahead.
I can jump in there. I mean, for me, I really think about the fact that I've had experience in all of those corners, right? I started my career as a genetics researcher, as a biologist, where I was really researching like the history of nutrition, and then I got the opportunity to work for our first Black president, Obama, in the White House in the first and second term, before becoming a full-time entrepreneur. And one thing that I realized was that research was too slow and policy was too slow. But, you know, startups, entrepreneurship could drive things a little bit faster, at least I'd like to think that way. But at the end of the day, we need to make sure that all three of those areas are connected. The research and all of the academic institutions that drive the support and sort of the scholarly results that really can support policy changes, and then the entrepreneurs that are on the ground that can really drive and show like what's happening, whether it's a farmer, whether it's someone working in logistics, whether it's, you know, working in data like what we do. And what we need to really remember is that no one core of those areas is more important than the other. And we all need each other to sort of push things forward. And so one thing that I love that Food Tank continually has done and shown up and makes it consistent is that we have policy discussions at every talk. I mean, I've been in AI talks with Danny, and these were on Capitol Hill. And so I think policy has really kept sort of farmer subsidies at an interesting role right now. I mean, when we think about the history of like sugar, for example, and farmer subsidies, like Black farmers were at the core of in sort of the innovation of sugar production over the past 120 years, and they're essentially, you know, less than 1% of the market today. And so I think we need to make sure that our policymakers and show up and make sure that they're driving as much inclusivity as possible, and also biodiversity. Like, we don't have enough conversations about how we can make sure our policies are driving the support and biodiversity of our small farmers.
Indeed.
But thanks for bringing it up. Yeah.
I was just going to add, you talked about policy being too slow, and I think national policy really is, but when you start to talk about local policy and what's happening particularly in your city or your region, you know, the hope is that you'll see a bit more speed. But I think on the practical level, one of the things that some of us here locally try to do is, you know, ensure that our purchasing power works both directions, right? You have to mark out some part of that, or be honest, give up some margin in order to be able to do that, right? And to look fairly at these lists and say, okay, how do I ensure that in whatever program or the product that I'm making, that I can find you know, the right product with the right OpEx and engage them directly and say, look, I can make this happen, but it's going to take both of us. So part two of that is the farmers have to come to market. They can't just sort of produce and stay out there and say, I made this stuff and that's that. They're going to have to come to market and have a market conversation about those products so that the folks who are going to consume and use them, say like we do in our meals or any other product or even a CPG product, they can actually be a part of the conversation in order to fit their product into others' pricing and models that will work. And be willing to have a conversation. We cannot have it's okay to have a math conversation about costs. Don't be ashamed to do that, right? Especially
Hey,
if you,
I majored in mathematics.
I know.
I'll do that.
I know. And if you want to win, you're going to have to go have the how much does that cost? Okay, this is what it's going to cost me. Let's find a place to be able to do this.
Wait,
period.
can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
'Cause, like, when you say come to market, like, what does that mean for you? We have companies all the time that are like, we want to buy from Black farmers, we want to buy from local farms here, we want this ingredient at this price, we're looking for more indigenous crops, et cetera.
You're talking about You're talking about big corporate.
No.
Oh,
These-
okay.
These can be companies with, $10,000 in sales that are, starting off their mission like that. So, like, what do you mean by coming to market? Because I feel like there's still so many barriers for these farmers
Sure.
just to sell at a local farmer's market.
So when I say come to market, I mean that you're going to find those transform entrepreneurs who are going to take your product with them to market, right? It's going to be in their food, it's going to be in their process, it's going to be in their distribution in order for those costs to work between the two of you to make that happen, right?
Okay.
I think for that to happen right now, from what I know in Texas, the company needs to find a black farmer or two that almost all are in the starting blocks. So that land is fallow and it has muck cows on it because that's the best value for the taxes. And then talk with that farmer and figure out what crop that farmer can grow and what crop that company will buy and what they will pay. And then it's worth the farmer taking the risk. But I mean, the price isn't going to get any lower. So, I mean, it's not. 30 miles from here, farmland last week sold 20 acres, $80,000 an acre, $2 million. So entrepreneurs out there, change makers out there, how about talking to the real estate industry?
We're in the real estate business, guys.
Who's making money off of that, taking of that farmland? Not that it was growing food before, but if it could. So if the real estate industry gave 0.5%, 0.5% of their real estate commissions to a farmland fund, just in the Austin area, it would raise almost $6 million a year. So do that.
So
Right?
would the idea be that you create this tax, or whatever you want to call it, and you raise this money, and some entity buys the farmland, matches farmers? There's a program, I was just talking to a young woman here today, Farm Share? Yes.
Share Austin.
Yes.
There's
Who
a
is training?
variety of models of how
Yeah.
that money could be
And then you
used.
match farmers with community-owned land from this. I mean, that would be a way. I mean, I'm always looking for when there's something happening in a community that seems detrimental. Like when you have this massive real estate boom, this gentrification beyond. I grew up in Austin. I grew up in the northeast side of Austin. And the gentrification that I've seen is beyond Brooklyn, it's beyond San Francisco. I mean, it is just incredible. But so you've got this massive real estate boom, you've got this gentrification, but okay, this is happening, what can we pull out of it? Well, let's make the real estate people that are driving around in Mercedes, let's take a little bit of the money they're making and start building community institutions from it, is the idea.
And I'm not even saying make them. I'm saying, what's fair? What's fair and what's right? If you're making millions of dollars because you're an entrepreneur and you're building a giant factory east of Austin, what's fair? What are your employees going to eat?
It might be fair to take it. It might be fair to impose a
Sorry?
tax on. I said it might be fair to impose a tax on them, expropriate.
But I mean, don't we all want our children to come to? Don't kids learn better when they eat healthy food? Don't workers work better when we're eating healthy food? So we all have a vested interest here. And I think, and this may sound way beyond the scope here, but I think we have to think about what does it mean to be human in our society right now. What does it mean for us to live together in community, striving for harmony and healthiness?
And that's why I think it's important when we're talking about coming to market. You're trying to find the win-win here. This is not a battle that any individual entrepreneur is going to win by themselves. You're going to have partners. They're partner entrepreneurs. We figured out that's how we get ahead. We spend all of our time finding that. But part of that partnership has to be with farmers, but they can't be afraid of us. And there's reason why they're afraid of us, okay? The technologist who now has this facility who makes food and meals. I mean, okay, that will breed anxiety, right? And so that trust is lost. And so we have to spend time saying, I'm going to show you how you can afford to do this, how we could afford to do this, and we all go to market together successfully. But but you have to invest the time and actually have to show them.
Okay, we have time, I think, for each person to take 15 seconds.
Oh my gosh, it's so
I just realized the
fast.
clock is right in front of me.
Okay, I don't have a soundbite ready, so you go.
Me? There's a win-win situation here, right? There absolutely is, right? But it is with us individuals knowing what we need, going to those spaces, and actually saying, how do we, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever that is, make that happen and make that visible, and we go to market and make money together, period, end of discussion.
Together, not in hyper competition, but we try to figure out ways to work in
There's no
partnership.
need for hyper competition, and hyper competition will not make production win.
No.
Well, there's other folks, right? But there is a win here at this entrepreneur level.
15 seconds?
I think 40 years ago, we were spending 20% of our average dollar on food and 8% on our health, and today it's 24% on our health and 8% on our food. I think when we come here, and the title of this event is Community, Culture, and Economy, we need to figure out ways to spend more money, not more money in ingredients at the grocery store. We're trying to figure that out, but spend more of our time, more of our investment, more of our dollars, more of our infrastructure build on the food industry, because it's really an inextricable link to most of our problems that we're all facing today, and I hope that we can sort of have a combined interest in figuring those things out. Yeah.
Last word.
In 2007, the iPhone was invented, and there was never a campaign against the landline. So I think sometimes we think about fighting against. But remember, there was never a campaign against the landline. New ways of doing things were brought to the fore. They came into our lives, and the old ways fell into disuse. So we can do this. We can do this if we pay attention, follow the food, follow the money. We can make a change and create the food system that we really want to have.
Well, this conversation is only getting started. Unfortunately, we have to bring it to a close.
Thank
guys
you,
were
Food
amazing.
Tank.
Thank you so
guys.
much. Thank you, Food Tank.